Christmas has always meant a lot to me. I think I got that from my mom. She was the kind of person who would start putting up the tree in the first week of November and spent the entire month humming carols while baking gingerbread cookies. Ever since she passed away almost 5 years ago, Christmas lost a bit of its sparkle for most of my family except for me. I made sure to keep alive every little detail she loved, especially the gifts. My dad, Charles, was never the emotional type. He was more on the practical, quiet, reserved side. After Mom was gone, he closed himself off even more. But I kept showing up. I made a point of visiting often, calling him on weekends, inviting him over for lunch. And Christmas! Oh, Christmas was my thing. I would go all out. I'd spend weeks thinking of the perfect gift. No last-minute buys. I wanted him to feel remembered, valued. This past Christmas, I decided it had to be special. I spent months saving money from my job, cutting back on little luxuries, just to gather enough for a present worthy of the man who raised me alone after Mom passed. My dad had always been fascinated by vintage watches, never a collector, but he loved watching documentaries and reading about them. So I did my homework and found a restorer in rural Texas who had a genuine wristwatch from the 1950s, with a mother-of-pearl dial and a real leather strap. A classic, elegant, and expensive, but it was worth it. He was going to love it. I showed up at his house on the evening of December 24th with the present wrapped in a navy blue box, tied with a silver ribbon, and a handwritten card. My heart was racing while he opened it, in that usual composed way of his. He let out a brief when he saw the watch, then a nice, and gently placed it back in the box, saying he'd keep it for a special occasion. I smiled, even though something inside me felt a little hollow. But I didn't think much of it. I figured it was just his way. His emotions came in small, quiet waves. I hoped maybe he'd wear the watch for Christmas dinner the next day. But he didn't. Not on the 25th. Not the following week, when I met him for coffee. Nothing. The real disappointment hit me a couple of weeks later. It was a regular evening in January. I was at his house waiting for the coffee to finish brewing when he answered the phone. He thought I was out back, but I had just gone to grab my charger from the spare bedroom. I overheard the conversation as I came down the quiet hallway. "Christmas? Oh, it was fine," he said, then chuckled. A short, muffled laugh. Emily went all out, as usual. Gave me a watch. A nice-looking thing. Sure, but, honestly, I'm never gonna wear that thing. I froze in the doorway. Something sank inside me, like the air had been knocked out of my lungs. My heart slowed, and the world suddenly felt quieter than it should have. It wasn't just about the watch. It was about everything. Every extra hour I worked, every search I made, every night I imagined his face lighting up when he opened that box. I stood there for a while, unsure whether to go in or pretend I didn't hear a word. When he hung up, I slowly walked back to the kitchen, acting like nothing had happened. He glanced over, grabbed both mugs, and said, "Coffee's ready." I sat at the table, staring at the wall, tasting something bitter that wasn't coffee. He would never know I heard him, but I'd never forget what he said. And in that moment, for the first time in a long time, I started to wonder, was I trying to keep something alive that only meant something to me? The days that followed felt heavier than usual. I kept going through the motions. Work, errands, a few texts with friends, but there was this dull weight I carried around like a bag I couldn't set down. I didn't bring up what I had heard. I couldn't. It would have sounded petty, I told myself. After all, it was just a watch, just a gift. But deep down, I knew it wasn't about the object. It was about what it symbolized. I had poured so much of myself into that moment. I wanted him to feel seen, appreciated. I wanted, even if he'd never say it out loud, for him to look at that watch and think, "She gets me. She knows what I love." But instead, what I got was that sentence, "I'm never gonna wear that thing," etched into my memory like a crack on glass. No matter how much I tried to smooth it over, it was still there. Visible. Unavoidable. The weekend after, I stopped by again with groceries, like I usually did. Dad was in the living room reading the newspaper, glasses halfway down his nose. Everything about the scene looked so normal, so typical, and yet I felt like a stranger in my own routine. "Hey," I said, placing the bags on the counter. "I got your favorite soup." He glanced over the top of his reading glasses, smiled faintly, and said, "You didn't have to do that." I shrugged. "I know." I watched him for a moment, wondering if he ever thought about how much I did, how much I gave. Not just money, but time, presence, effort. Did he ever notice? After lunch, while he napped in the recliner, I wandered around the house. I do that sometimes. It feels like revisiting memories. There was still a photo of Mom in the hallway, her eyes smiling in that way they always did when she looked at people she loved. I touched the frame lightly and whispered, "You wouldn't have said that about the watch." Her absence felt like a hole in the middle of everything. She would have noticed. She would have worn it even if it didn't match her outfit, just to make me feel proud. But with Dad, I was constantly chasing a flicker of warmth that never quite stayed lit. That night, back at my apartment, I sat with the watch box on my lap. I had taken it home the previous visit, making up some excuse about getting it cleaned, though really, I just couldn't stand to see it collecting dust on his shelf like an afterthought. I opened the box and stared at it for a long time. The craftsmanship, the history, the thought behind it, all meaningless now. I don't know what got into me, but I looked up vintage watch groups online and found a small forum where people traded stories and memories about old timepieces. I started reading, and something surprising happened. I didn't feel sad. I felt, understood. These were people who would have loved to receive something like this. They would have appreciated it not just for its value, but for the sentiment. So I posted a picture. "Bought this for my dad this Christmas. He didn't want it. Thought I'd share it here with people who might value what it represents." I didn't expect a response, but within an hour, there were over a dozen comments. Strangers saying how beautiful it was, how lucky he was to have someone care so much. One woman wrote, "If my daughter ever gave me something like that, I'd wear it every day." That one hit me hard. The next day, I didn't call Dad. I didn't text either. For the first time in a long while, I chose silence. And it wasn't to punish him, it was to give myself space. I needed to figure out what I was really doing all this time. Was I trying to prove something? Was I trying to earn something from him that he just couldn't give? The thing about loving someone like my father is, you do it hoping that one day they'll show you they noticed, that they were watching. But sometimes they weren't. Not really. Not the way you hoped. And so I sat alone that evening, not angry, not bitter, but changed. Something had shifted. Maybe it was time I stopped wrapping my love in ribbons, expecting it to come back the same way. A few days passed. I didn't reach out, and neither did he. At first, I thought he might call. Maybe ask if something was wrong or mention the watch, even casually. But there was nothing. Just the usual silence, as if nothing had shifted, though something inside me had changed entirely. I spent that week doing things for myself. Things I hadn't done in a while. I visited an art exhibit I'd been putting off. I made dinner just for me. Not the quick meals I usually threw together after a long day, but real food with flavors I liked. I even pulled out an old sketch pad and started drawing again. It had been years. The distance from my father created a strange kind of quiet in my life. Not empty, but peaceful. And in that stillness, I started to hear myself more clearly. My thoughts, my needs, my own voice, which had been buried under layers of trying to earn affection that was never freely offered. Then, on Sunday morning, I got a call. It was him. I let it ring twice before answering. "Hey," I said, keeping my voice even. "Emily," he replied, pausing like he wasn't sure what to say next. "I haven't heard from you." I waited. "You okay?" There it was, concern, maybe. Or maybe just curiosity about the change in routine. Either way, I chose honesty. "I'm fine. Just taking a step back." Another pause. Did I do something? I almost laughed. Not because it was funny, but because it was so typical. It always took this long for him to notice something was off. But I took a breath and said, "You didn't have to say it out loud, Dad." He was quiet. "I heard you on the phone," I added. "About the watch." The silence on the line deepened. I pictured him sitting in his armchair, mouth slightly open, trying to piece together what I meant. "That wasn't meant for you to hear," he said finally. "But I did. And I wish I hadn't, because now every part of me that tried to make that Christmas special just feels embarrassed." His voice softened. "Emily, I didn't mean it like that." I sat on the edge of my couch, staring at the sunlight spilling through the window. "Then how did you mean it?" There was a sigh, a long one. "I don't wear watches," he said. "I haven't for years. Not since I retired. I'm just not that guy anymore." And I guess I didn't know how to say that without sounding ungrateful. "You didn't have to say anything. You just had to try." He didn't answer right away. Then he said something I wasn't expecting. "Your mother would have worn it," he said. "Even if she didn't like it. She would have worn it every day, just to see you smile." A lump rose in my throat. I swallowed hard, pressing my lips together to keep my voice steady. "She did that a lot," I whispered. "I know." There was a stillness between us. And then he added, "I miss her, Em, more than I say. And sometimes, when you do all these things to make holidays special again, it just reminds me of what I lost." I hadn't expected that either. Not the vulnerability. Not the crack in his voice. "I'm not trying to replace her," I said gently. "I'm just trying to make you feel less alone." He was quiet again, but the silence felt different this time. Less like avoidance. More like reflection. "I've always been proud of you," he said. "I don't say it enough." "No," I replied. "You really don't." A soft chuckle escaped him, almost like he was laughing at himself. "I'm sorry," he said, "for the comment, for not appreciating the effort, for being hard to read." I felt my shoulders drop, tension releasing in slow waves. "I don't need you to love the gift, Dad. I just needed to know you saw what it meant." I see it now. And strangely, I believed him. A few days after that phone call, I found myself back at my father's house. Not because he asked, though he had a few times, but because I felt ready. Something in our conversation had opened a small window, and I was willing to step through it. It wasn't forgiveness, not yet, but it was the beginning of something quieter, softer than hurt, understanding. He greeted me at the door with that usual awkwardness, unsure whether to hug me or just nod. This time I took the lead. I hugged him, a real one, the kind my mom used to give. He held on for a second longer than expected. Inside, things looked the same. His recliner still leaned slightly to the left. The same clock ticked above the kitchen door. But something felt different. Maybe it was him. Or maybe it was me. As we sat for coffee, I noticed a small, square box on the table. Familiar. He followed my gaze. "I was thinking," he said, picking up the box and setting it between us. "Maybe I judged too quickly. About the watch." I raised an eyebrow. "You mean that thing?" He winced, embarrassed. "Yeah, that thing." We both laughed, a real laugh, the kind that rises from old wounds starting to close. "I looked at it again," he continued, "and it really is beautiful. You don't have to wear it, Dad." "I know, but I want to." He opened the box, carefully this time, like he was handling something more than just a piece of metal and leather. Something with memory, intention, meaning. Slowly, he slid the watch onto his wrist and fastened it. "How does it feel?" I asked. "Strange," he admitted, "but good." I smiled. That's how most change feels. There was something healing about that moment. Not because of the watch itself, but because he saw it, really saw it, for what it meant to me. And for once, he let me see him too. His hesitations, his regrets, his effort. Afterward, we cooked dinner together. Nothing fancy, grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato soup, but it was the first time in years that we shared a kitchen without tension. He told me about an old watch shop he used to walk by when he was younger, how he always admired the displays, but never went inside. Not once. Didn't seem practical, he said. But sometimes the best things aren't, I replied. As the evening wound down, I helped him clean up and got ready to leave. At the door, he handed me a folded piece of paper. What's this? Just something I wrote. Don't open it until you get home. I nodded and gave him one more hug, this one warmer, less guarded. Back at my apartment, I sat on the couch and unfolded the note. It was written in his handwriting, neat, careful, old-fashioned. Emily, I don't say things the way you do. I wasn't raised to talk about feelings, and maybe that's a fault I've carried longer than I should have. But I see you. I see everything you do. The way you keep showing up, keep trying, even when I make it hard. I don't always know how to receive love, but I do love you more than I know how to say. Your gift reminded me of something I forgot. That time matters, and so does intention. I'm proud of the woman you are. I'm proud that you're mine. Thank you for teaching me that it's never too late to learn how to love better. Dad, I sat there for a long time, holding the note to my chest, letting the quiet wrap around me. The ache I'd been carrying began to soften. It didn't vanish. Healing rarely works like that. But something real had begun. A new chapter, written not in flawless gestures, but in the courage to show up honestly again and again. And maybe that was the true gift all along.